Civ 6 kinda sucks, and here's why. First of all, this is a remake of one of my very first videos here on YouTube. A lot of things have changed since then, including my opinions on Civ. And having said that, let's dive into the video. It is amongst the best time-wasting, or I guess time-consuming games today. You can spend hours upon hours starting a new game, building your empire, and chasing the potential of what it could look like in the far, far future of the atomic or information era. But most of the time, I don't even get to that point. It's not that the game is difficult, it's that the late game sucks. But since late game is a very broad description, let's narrow it down a little. One of the most glaring issues that anyone who has played Civ 6 will notice is that the AI is really bad. And by really bad, I mean really bad. Once you figure out the basic game mechanics, it doesn't stand a chance on an even playing field. To combat this and to make the game more engaging, the AI gets a bunch of boosts, bonuses, and resources. How much depends on the difficulty setting. In a sense, it's like fighting a 12-year-old. Every time you increase the difficulty, he gets a new weapon, starting from nothing to ending up with a baseball bat. The trick is to get your own baseball bat and level the playing field. Except, well, you're much bigger and stronger. This is Civ 6 in a nutshell. Weather the storm for the first 100 to 200 turns and congratulations, you have won the game. Is there even a point in playing this one to the end? To answer that question, let's take a look at some of the systems or gameplay mechanics of Civ 6. Combat. It's not the most complex or nuanced system, but I don't think it's bad. There's a rock, paper, scissors type dynamic between the types of units, with the addition of support, ranged, naval, and air units. Terrain plays a pretty big role, as certain places can give you a bonus or penalty in combat strength, and also has different types of movement costs. Now let's add the AI to the mix. It has its quirks, like going for non-combat civilian units instead of your military ones in almost any situation. In other words, getting easily baited by your masterful tactics. Should I clear all the military units first and then go for the civilian ones? Nah, let's just go for the builder and leave ourselves in a vulnerable position. On the same note, the AI doesn't realize that it's impossible to take a city with only ranged units. So once you get rid of the melee ones besieging your city, you're pretty much safe. The computer doesn't know this though and keeps attacking your city with the hopes to eventually take it. And those vulnerable ranged units are now easy pickings. There's many more little AI quirks like this, but they're not as bad as not being able to deal with naval units. It just can't. In my 700 plus hours of Civ 6, I have never seen the AI adequately defend itself from a naval invasion. The same thing goes for airplanes. If you're losing a game, build a bunch of airplanes and bomb the crap out of anything in sight. It works every time. So the combat system sucks because the AI sucks. But it also sucks because of this. Well, that's fucking awesome. The enemy health bar glows all the way, making you think your attack will kill, but it doesn't. They survive on like 1 HP. I wish I could say that this happens rarely in Civ 6, but it doesn't. Its newly released competitor, Old World, does not have this problem, because it's stupid for a strategy game to have it in the first place. Your strategy depends on what information you have in front of you. If the game tells you that this attack will kill that unit, you plan accordingly. But now your strategy got foiled by, well, the game. While this is not a major flaw in an otherwise decent combat system, it's a really stupid one. Instead of fixing this in May of 2020, they came out with the new Frontier Pass, a series of DLC released bi-monthly until March of 2021. Here we were promised a lot of new things, including 6 different game modes. As I was looking through the comment section of the announcement video for the new Frontier Pass, some months before it came out, I saw a lot of comments asking for a diplomacy or a religion game mode, or maybe they could make a game mode around trade routes. That would be awesome. While I was positively surprised with some of the actual Frontier Pass game modes, nothing like the suggested ones were ever implemented. And unless they revamp the whole religion, diplomacy, or trading system, it's never going to be. Because all systems in Civ 6 are pretty shallow. Trade routes and trade deals are a good example to start with. Trade routes simply don't do much more than give some yields. Most of the time, this is the amount of gold you make per turn. Sure, you get trade posts and better relations with the civilizations you trade to, but these are negligible. Establishing a trading post does nothing more than increase the yield you were getting previously. It doesn't change anything about the way trading works, it doesn't unlock any new mechanics. So in the end, it doesn't matter if you have a trading post established in one city if another city without a trading post gives more yields. So while establishing a trading post sounds really cool on paper, in-game it's merely a yield increase. Trade deals with the AI just end up being a patience test of how much time you're willing to spend figuring out what exactly you can get out of the civilization you're trading to. Because most of the time they won't give you gold up front and suggest a deal with some bullshit thrown in there. So how much gold are you willing to give me for 20 gold? 200's too much. Let's try 150. Well, 150 is okay, let's try 175. Okay, that's too much. How about 170? That's still too much. 165 maybe?
One eternity later.
You know you could have told me you want 20 coal for 164 gold from the beginning, right? While dealing with AI this way is annoying, it's nowhere near as bad as the diplomacy. And if you're wondering what diplomacy, you're right, there is no diplomacy. In the beginning parts of the game on easier difficulties, people like you for no reason, and on harder difficulties, people hate you for no reason. Here I am 24 turns into a fresh game, minding my own business, having just met a few civilizations, when one of them, Peter, leader of Russia, decides to come right up to my face and tell me how much of a despicable leader I am. What's the reason given for this? Well, they just don't like you.
Bruh.
Similarly, Pedro here is having a fit about my transgressions and how the world needs to know about them. The reason, you guessed it, they plain don't like me. What a layered and deeply complex diplomacy system we have here. All you can realistically do is send them a delegation and hope you don't get denounced within the first 5 turns of meeting them. Trying to otherwise communicate with the other civilizations is also an absolute mess. You can make demands and ask for free stuff, but nobody ever accepts it, no matter how far ahead you are, so the make demands button might as well not be there. And the make promise option is bullshit. I can spend 30 diplomatic points to ask somebody not to settle close to me only to be met with, "Oh, I will do what I want." Or instead I just sell those diplomatic points for some decent cash. Not to mention that needing diplomatic points to do basic communication with the other civilizations is stupid. I can't tell somebody that I'll shove a stick up their ass if they keep settling right next to me if I'm not liked enough by the global community. And what's the deal with not being able to tell other civilizations to move away from my borders or declare war, but the AI can put this ultimatum on me just fine? It wouldn't really be worth the diplomatic points, but still. Oh, and alliances. Let's talk about alliances. In a sense, they tie together the previous topics of trade routes and diplomacy. Because you see, at the first level of any alliance except for the military one, you simply receive bonus yields on trade routes. And while level 3 alliances are more significant, they don't add any new mechanics or change the gameplay. If I'm in a military alliance with another civ, I want the ability to coordinate an attack on a specific city at a specific turn with preferably a specific military strength. You see, that would be a fun way to design an alliance instead of having just units start with a free promotion. Even if you're in a joint war, regardless if it's with an ally or not, here's what happens most of the time. Your ally is going to send in like 5 units, get them killed by being stupid, make peace, and leave you to fight alone. This is her whole army, so what is Congo doing with his 400 military strength? A military alliance is another flat increase in numbers because the AI can't be relied upon. This lack of depth is unfortunately consistent with most of the game's mechanics. It is also consistent in a more broad aspect, its strategy. Here's what you do. Put down as many cities and as many districts as you can. That's it. That's the winning strategy for 99% of your Civ games. Spam settlers. If you're going for a science victory or a culture one is secondary. While there's nothing wrong with that strategy per se, there's just no variety. They did add 1 or 2 tall civs that do well with a few cities to try to combat this, but it's still a fundamental issue with the game, and adding very specific new civilizations as a countermeasure is just a band-aid solution. And while you're encouraged to have as many cities as possible, eventually this becomes a problem. Managing too many cities in Civ 6 is not fun. It's fatiguing, time-consuming, and sometimes even pointless. This is especially apparent when you're going for a domination victory and start capturing buttloads of cities. If you want to keep the good ones, you have to capture a lot of surrounding ones as well, thanks to how loyalty works. Because if you don't, they will become independent again due to all the pressure. Making sure all the work tiles in these cities are improved is a pain in the ass. So why can't I automate my builders, or even better, automate my cities? The game already recommends what tiles to improve and what buildings to build, so why not use that as a foundation to automate everything? Cities just need to take districts into consideration, and you could tell the cities what districts to focus on from a preset such as science, culture, entertainment, or simply build the districts I have the most of in my empire. And while we're on the topic of building and empire, there's certain things you're never going to be able to build on the Diety difficulty. Early game wonders such as the Stonehenge, for example. Everybody's gunning for it at this point of the game, and they all have 10 times more production than you do. Some things like this you're never going to experience simply because of the difficulty you're playing on. While there are some minor but really stupid flaws,
For fuck's sake!
and some flaws with the early game, the biggest issue I have with Civ is that late game is really flawed. Because the AI sucks, the systems or gameplay mechanics are really shallow, There's no incentive not to go wide and spam settlers, and managing too many cities ultimately becomes a nightmare. Even watching Civ 6 videos on YouTube goes from exciting
These quadriremes here are as escort units from Otarapa
to we got it, Potato, you don't need to settle your 25th city on that tiny tundra island. You already have 10 times more tourism than everybody else combined. The early game is by far the best and most exciting part of Civ 6. You can play it for hundreds and hundreds of hours with that just one more turn itch that you keep scratching over and over again. But it's just so bizarre to me that one part of the game is just straight up boring. That the systems are so surface level and the AI is so bad. Civilization 6 came out in 2016 and it's still getting updates and new content to this day. We got a Rise and Fall expansion in 2018, the Gathering Storm expansion in 2019, and the new Frontier Pass in 2020. And of course, a few civilizations here and there between. This sounds awesome, except they're all paid DLCs. If you bought all the DLCs separately, it would have cost you more than 200 euros. That's over $240. Sure, you can get the new Anthology bundle for a 50% discount. RIP to all the people who bought all the DLC before this. But the civilization that I just reviewed is not a $60 full price AAA title. It's more than triple the price. I wonder how a review of the base game would go. Where there were no things such as loyalty, governors, natural disasters, era score, and all the rest. Having no loyalty system would mean that the AI would forward settle you constantly and then magically build walls in 2 turns in a shitty 1 population city. And well, good luck dealing with that. So the big question is it worth it? From the customer point of view, is it worth it? From the publisher point of view, is it worth it? All the time, effort and money spent on these fancy new civs and new game modes. I can tell you the AI has been shit since 2016. And the gameplay mechanics and systems didn't magically downgrade themselves either. So why not work on the obvious flaws instead of just adding more and more to the game? It makes a lot of sense from a business standpoint, but you don't maintain a fan base with greedy business practices. So while I do enjoy playing Civ every now and again, in a lot of aspects, the game just kinda sucks. Thanks for watching.